What Americans get wrong about wealth building.
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Yeah, Brian, I am so excited about this show because I think a lot of folks have some misinformation or the wrong idea about what it actually takes to build wealth, specifically in this country, at this time, in this day and age. And we've been doing this long enough now. We've seen the tried and true steps that you can take, the tried and true methods to actually build wealth. So we want to kind of flip the script and set the record straight on the right ways to do it and how not to fall into that broke category.
If you've ever been curious how wealthy people do it legitimately, not what's in some brochure, what's in somebody's glossy sales process, we're going to show all that today. But first, let's set the table, Bo. What I would like to do is go over some stats that prove, without a doubt, most Americans are failing on the wealth building process.
Yeah, so the first stat, this one just like, if you want to think about one that like makes our blood boil, this is it. 47% of credit card users carry a balance. That means 47% of folks who use credit cards make the decision every month, hey, I'm not going to pay it off in full. I'm going to carry debt from one period to the next. That is napalm to your financial situation. It's not what you want to do if you're making sound financial decisions.
You and I talk about, we give a lot of grace in the fact that we actually allow people to use credit cards. But approximately half the folks should go cold turkey and not even use it because they're carrying a balance. That is no-go land. Don't fall into that trap.
And so here's the second one. The average auto loan term for new cars is now 72 months. I don't know about you, Brian, but I think most of my friends, most of my peers I talk to, they don't even drive cars for 72 months. And yet they're taking out loans that will take that long to pay off. That's not a way to build wealth over the long term.
Well, what's interesting, if you go into the numbers on that stat of 72 months, a third of car buyers are also trading in cars that are underwater.
Like
so what you just said
equity,
is exactly right. People are not even driving them long enough to pay them off. They're actually doubling down on the debt situation by actually trading in cars that are underwater and rolling that negative equity into the next car loan.
If you've been listening to our show for any amount of time, you've heard this statistic before, and this may be one of the most frightening ones. 61% of Americans right now today don't have $1,000 in savings. Meaning, if they were to have a medical incident, if they were to have something happen to their car, their house, some sort of emergency, they could not come up with $1,000 today without going into debt. That's not a good thing.
People ask me, say, where do your stats come from? And we always share, hey, this is coming from Bankrate, these other research, but you can set your clock to that stat of $1,000 is going to be 59, 60, 61 every year. It's just depressing. I was like, how can people not get this straight?
And then the last one, and this is like for financial mutants, I think this is the one that really bothers you to the core. 34% of Americans don't get the full employer match in their employer-sponsored retirement plan. That means about 1 in 3 Americans just don't like free money. They opt to walk away from free money every single pay period. And it's really hard, again, to build wealth if you don't just capitalize on the easy part of wealth building, the free money part of wealth building.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time. And realize when we're talking about people not getting their full employer match, a lot of employers are giving you 3%, 6%. I mean, so these are thousands of dollars each year that you get. Yet every one of you that's missing out on that employer match, if I offered you $20, $100, you would not leave the room without picking up your $20 or $100. But yet $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, you're just leaving on the table. It's a disaster.
So we know that those are the statistics. Those are some things that Americans are getting wrong. And meanwhile, right now we live in the technology age, right? Where there's so much information. I mean, you guys out there connecting with us via technology to learn about sound financial principles. So there's a very easy way to get information now. But the problem is there's a lot of information out there.
Yeah, I mean, we've shared with you guys, this is the greatest time to be alive if you want to start building wealth because everything is approachable and easy to get to. Technology has made all things accessible, but yet we're drowning in all this opportunity that we have. And we have some examples we want to show you on all the things that are pulling you away from the center of how you actually build wealth.
Yeah, here's a headline. Here's why cryptocurrencies are a better investment than stocks. You should participate in cryptos instead of stocks. Another headline is 7 ways to get rich without leaving the couch. And now it's just easy. And then this one, Brian, I thought was really interesting. This is a video and it says, how to become super rich and successful with binary trading. And I think most average investors think, oh, what? Binary trading, that sounds sophisticated. Must be pretty good. I should probably get onto that.
Binary trading actually came up for the first time to me in one of our TikTok reaction videos. So go check those out if you haven't. But I did think it was very interesting. I love that Daniel found this. If you look in the red box there that he highlighted, the red box is our highlight. You may lose most or all of your capital, and that boils down the problem with what's going on right now. So before we get into the steps, I do think it's important to boil down what is actually blowing up to where most Americans are making mistakes with creating wealth. And the first thing is that you're faking it until you make it.
Right.
You're getting into debt. You're letting debt tear apart and turn compounding interest upside down where it's working against you. And the second thing is every huckster that's out there selling their system or getting a get rich quick, a lot of you guys are falling prey and going into that trap. We want to tell you the reality. What's funny is that I know business owners who are creating successful businesses. I know people right out of college. This is universal that good information is not guaranteed.
Right.
We kind of wanted to walk you through what's the difference between the dreams or what's presented in the brochures versus reality.
And here's one thing I get frustrated with. You know, we live in this world where we all have a goal, right? We want to reach financial independence. We want to have wealth. We want to get to the end of the road and have that, illustrated here, that big bag of money, right? I think what is happening today with public perception is most people think I have to find the rocket ship. I have to find that thing that's going to get me from where I am today to where I want to be as fast as possible.
To the moon.
To the moon. I don't care how aggressive it is. I don't care how wild it is. I don't care how uncomfortable it is. I just want to get there as quickly as possible. And I think a lot of people fall prey to believing that's the way that you build wealth. When in reality, what we have uncovered and what we've discovered both with the clients we work with as well as for ourselves is that wealth building most oftentimes, is not on a rocket. It's a steady walk up the mountain.
Yeah.
It is a stair step. It is one foot in front of the other, making sound financial decisions, small ones early on, and then they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they compound and they grow. And you actually have a much clearer path to wealth than this rocket ship that may or may not hit the ending target.
Yeah, it's definitely not a straight shot like you would with a moon landing. This is definitely something where it's going to be a little bit of chaos, ups and downs. But we even have some stats that confirm this. I don't want you to take our word for it. We actually have the data that shows that there is a journey to this wealth creation process.
Yeah, so millionaires on average, this is according to Ramsey Solutions' National Study of Millionaires, millionaires on average, they saved and invested for an average of 28 working years, 28 years into their career before hitting that $1 million mark, before getting to call themselves a millionaire. And they usually did that around age 49.
Yeah. And then that even goes deeper. We do our own wealth study of our audience, and we have found that is confirmed. Most people are investors. They build it up in their employer retirement plans. Guys, there's lots of opportunity. Don't waste what's going on with your opportunity. And this is what I wanted to talk about my own personal journey. It was slow, and then it was very fast. When you talk about compounding growth, it is very much exponential, not linear. So when you're in your 20s, when you're in your 30s in that messy middle, it's going to feel slow. I'm telling you guys, when the building process keeps stacking and it exponentially starts growing, one day it's going to move so fast that you're going to be like, wow, what happened? Being in my 40s, I get that wisdom when I talk to my neighbors and my peers. We all talk about that phenomenon. I don't want you to miss out.
And Brian, it was so interesting. You know, we recently came out with this new net worth template, and you and I were kind of going through. We updated it for the end of last year. We were kind of talking through it, and it was fun. Each of us looking back 10 years ago, and like, oh wow, and then looking at 9 and 8 and 7. It wasn't like there was just one year you were down here, and the next year we were up here. It is a steady and consistent walk, and I think it's supposed to be that way. We just don't have society and the media and the public perception reminding us that that's the case.
Yeah, it's going to be different. So let's actually jump into how do you actually build wealth And the first step is going to be the most obvious, but you're going to have to work for your money.
Yeah, it sounds sort of silly, right? Like the first step to wealth building is creating some way to create income, figuring out a way to go out and trade your time for money. Somehow do a vocation that ends up paying you to carry out that vocation.
Look, we are blessed that we're doing what I feel like we were put on this planet to do. And I want to encourage everyone, definitely find out what you do top 5% in the world and figure out if there's a way to create a living off that. I do want you to pursue your passion, follow your heart, but there is a big component that's left off of that entire discussion. And this is where the dreamers keeps the dreamers from actually becoming truly wealthy people, is that can that passion not only pay your bills, but create an extra margin, that 20 to 25%, so you can actually build wealth outside of what you're doing in your day job.
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of peers, Brian, who they came out of school and they just took the first job, right? Like they just took the very first job to eat. Maybe they didn't want to do the interview process or whatever, and they just took it, and they're perfectly content just clocking in, clocking out, and so long as they can make sure they have the rent covered and they have their groceries paid for and they keep the lights on, that's good enough, right? Without any real desire of, man, if I could figure out a way to maybe advance what I'm bringing in from an income standpoint, I could create that margin that allows me to actually build up wealth over time.
Yeah, substaining's not just enough. And I want to take this even deeper in the fact that what is the resource that's creating this is that time is actually, you are trading your time for money. That's what labor is. You are giving up a portion of your time to actually generate this income, to create the margin so you can save and invest. But I got to tell you, time, the component, is really unfair. Because let's face it, when you're younger, the majority of us, we have lots of time, but we don't have a lot of money. And it's kind of, you're like, man, I would love to be in Bora
I'd rather have,
Bora. I see all these bloggers, vloggers that are doing these great world travels. It just seems unfair that I have all this time, but I just don't have the resources. I'm going to tell you, as you get older and more successful, you're going to realize it's unfair when you're older too, because you will recognize, now I have resources, but I just don't have the time to go do all these things. So that's why I want you to understand that key component of what wealth really is that most valuable resource in the world, which is time, because there's a way you can make sure you're maximizing this and being very deliberate with how you use every second that you're on this planet.
And I think what's really interesting, Brian, is you and I talk about this. Obviously, you're a little bit older than I am, and you look back like, man, I wish I would have realized when I was in my 20s and in my 30s, and I did have a lot more disposable time to use. I wish I would have recognized at that time. None of us ever recognize how good things are in the moment that we are presently in. But I do think that one of the traits that millionaires recognize is that time is that super valuable resource, and how you spend your time matters. And so again, we've done shows on this before, but we think it's worth sort of reminding you. If you have read The Millionaire Next Door, you know we are super, super in love with the content there. This is what they found. They did their study of millionaires. On average, millionaires read about 3.5 more hours per week than the average American. So they recognize that if I do have time, and I am someone who's young, I am early on in my career, I'm going to devote myself to improving my education, to improving my knowledge base, spending time advancing and bettering myself. Millionaires also exercise 3 hours per week more than the average American. Again, they recognize that if I want to have time later, I better make sure that I'm taking care of myself now, that I'm putting in the effort so that this engine lasts for as long as it can last. And I think this one's really, really telling in today's society. Millionaires on average spend about 11.5 hours less per week on social media than the average American.
So that's almost picking up a full day and a half more productivity than the typical person who's just hanging out, looking at the gram or anything. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. We're all guilty of the screen time trap, but it's just making sure you're very deliberate and you are controlling your destiny versus letting this thing control you.
That's exactly right.
So let's. I want to kind of figure out what I think is interesting is that if you do this right, and this is where we're going to start talking about. We know about the value of this component, time. how do we invert the equation where we're so successful that we now can take the resource of money and get to use time how we want? I live on my terms, meaning that I don't have to work to pay the bills. Now I work because I want to, or I go travel because I can, I have the time and the ability with resources to use my time how I see fit. That's where I want to invert the equation to where you're no longer focusing on working because you have to. You are now doing things on your terms.
Yeah, and so that once you figured out how to work for money, the next thing you want to figure out, the next step or stage in the process is, how do I figure out how to make my money work for me? If I am able to create that job that creates that excess, how do I do things with that excess that now allows my money to turn around and provide value to me?
Remember, step one was the labor part. You have to actually go to work. Well, the problem, remember, this is where I said, follow your passion, but make sure that passion with how you spend your time working does create that excess margin, meaning you need to have the ability to create beyond your living expenses. And that's why you live on less than you make, so that you can actually invest. Because look, while you're young and you have plenty of time before you get in the messy middle, before the kids and all the other stuff, you're going to quickly realize that there will be a point that you want to do things more on your terms. So you need to be investing so your money can work for you. And that's not going to happen unless you understand, we got to start building some passive income. We got to start creating some mailbox money so that money works harder than I do.
Yeah, passive income through investing is not something that happens overnight. It's not like you just say, hey, today I want to have some passive income, so I'm going to invest tomorrow, and what I invest tomorrow is going to create passive income for me. That's not the way that it works. You actually have to build it up over time. And one of the ways that we talk about building up passive income over time is creating a plan that automatically allows you to begin building that wealth. It's the whole reason, the whole idea we came up with the financial order of operations. Yeah. If I do find that I have excess in my life, every pay period, every month, every pay cycle, where should I deploy those dollars, and how should I use those dollars to make them start working for me in the most efficient means and manner possible?
So we talk about it all the time. We keep this simple. I mean, I think people overcomplicate wealth building. We like simple things like index investing.
That's exactly right.
Why wouldn't you consider something as easy as investing in index? We're going to even talk about real estate and how to do it the truly passive way. That's coming up. And then, of course, we also have ways that we can focus on, bonds and other things. So, but why don't you walk them through the different returns and what you can expect from passive investing?
Yeah, I think what's really, really interesting is investing in like liquid securities and stocks and index funds. It really is one of the few what I would consider truly passive ways of income. We'll talk about some non-passive ways later on the show. But if you look at the returns that they generate and what they can do for you in terms of generating income, generating that passive income, making your money work for you. If you just look at the S&P 500, right now, presently, if you were to just buy an S&P 500 index fund, it has a current dividend yield, an income component of about 1.27%. And if you look at the historical annualized return of that index over the last 80 years, it's made almost 12% per year over the last 80 years without you having to figure out, what do I buy, what do I sell, what's good, what's not good. Instead of trying to beat the market, you're comfortable just being the market inside of that asset class. If you want to think about like passive real estate investments, you can look at the FTSE Nareit Index. Right now, it has a 2.85% dividend yield income component. And over the last 20 years, it's annualized. Again, almost a 12% rate of return. And even if you're someone who's maybe later in life, or so you're someone who needs a more conservative portfolio because of your risk tolerance or risk capacity or stage of your wealth building, you could even look at a bond index. I know right now bonds are not the most attractive thing in the world, but even right now, they have almost a 2% yield if you just look at the aggregate bond index. And if you look at the last 20 years, bonds have still made about 4% per year over the last 20 years. So these are real easy ways that you can deploy your capital to grow and compound for you through time.
Now, when we talk about, and we're going to come to it in the third stage in a second about real estate. So before you fall into somebody trying to tell you about their system or get you out there buying 10, 15 rental properties, when we talk about real estate investing, We're primarily talking about REITs.
That's right.
Mutual funds, ETFs, things that are truly passive. You give them your money, you walk away from it. There's not you showing up to make repairs at the location. Stocks, we're primarily talking about index funds. That's why you can see the data point is the S&P 500 on that. Bonds, we're kind of working off the same things. These are things you set it, forget it, you automate your wealth creation, and you just drive through it. This is the most important thing.
Now, what you may be saying right now, guys, that just it sounds too easy. Wealthy people don't actually do that. The wealthy people, they figure out the unique things. They figure out the special things. They figure out the stuff that the rest of us general public just don't know about. I don't know that I would agree with that, because one of the things that we love to do every year, and it's coming up this year, is we like to do what we call our annual wealth survey of our financial planning clients, of you guys, of the financial mutants that listen to the show and end up becoming members of the Abound Wealth family. And we have some questions we'd like to ask you about your journey and about what you've built. And one of the questions we ask is, hey, how did you become wealthy? And I think that the answers might surprise you, because it's different, again, from what the public perception would be.
Yeah, we've done shows and content on the virtuoso, somebody who's so good at what they do that they got rich off of it. That's like your athletes, that's your performers, other things. Entrepreneurs, this is the people who are taking tremendous risks, starting enterprises, senior executives. These are all the things that you think. And then we've got the lowly old saver and investor. And once you know it, 68% of our clients actually fall into that saver and investor category. Don't let somebody ruin how the journey occurs just because they make a brochure, the glossy brochure, say something completely different.
And what gets me so excited about that is, if we're just going to be honest, not everyone can be a virtuoso. Frankly, not everyone, in my opinion, can be an entrepreneur, because there's a special skill set required to do that well. Not everyone has the capacity to become a senior executive, but everyone, no matter your vocation, no matter where you come from, no matter your background, no matter your bias, has the ability to be a saver and investor. And so everyone has access to this quadrant of wealth building. It's just a matter of recognizing that early on and taking advantage of it.
Yeah, and what I like, everything we've talked about here is simple. It's not going to require you. This is really mailbox money. It's passive in the fact that you put the money in, you come back in decades later, and the money's waiting there to start replacing your income. It's not going to have you, we know, Bo, we own real estate. It's not going to have you with a plunger pulling poo out of some, pushing the poo down, because that is not what my idea of passive investing.
Not passive.
It's not passive. I mean, if you're having to go to your rental properties and repair and plunge poo, you are not a passive investor. You want to set it and forget it, give somebody your money, let it grow, and then come back and it replace your actual labor, your hours. So once again, you control your time.
Here's the other thing we love about liquid investing that's different than the other ways of wealth building. Now, Brian, you started a number of businesses over your tenure, over your working career. Would you say that you were able to automate starting and running a business? No, it's like a difficult thing. Like, you have to be very actively involved in that. Certainly, if you're going to be a senior executive and you're going to try to work up at your company, you have to do that. What I love about passive investing is that you can set it up automatically to happen, and it can happen every pay period, every pay cycle, whether the market's going really, really well, whether the market's not going really, really well. If you're taking some of your dollars and putting them into your army of dollar bills to work for you, you will be amazed at how the wealth builds up, and you can focus on the other things in your life that you want to be focusing on. I think it's a beautiful way to build wealth.
I love the set it and forget it, because in the beginning, you're setting and forgetting it, automating your investment, you're driving through no matter what's going on. We've had a little volatility in 2022 just to start off things, and you don't care. If you're doing this right, you don't care. And if you set it and forget it, you get to graduate down the road when you're traveling to Cabo or Bora Bora or other things like that. The set it and forget it gets to be inverted in the fact that you get your money automatically deposited into your accounts as you start pulling that money out. I love the thought of setting it and forgetting it today. So in the future, you set it and forget it and pull the money back out to you. That's what we're talking about.
So we've talked about working for your money, right? Creating a way to generate income. Then we talked about flipping it and making your money work for you. I think the third step, or the third phase, or the third strata, whatever you want to call it, I think this is where most people get caught up. And I think this is where most people like to, frankly, I think it's where people get off the rails. And it's figuring out how to maximize your money.
This is the sexy sizzle.
It's the
I mean,
sexy
let's just go ahead and be honest. Most of you who watch YouTube content, and I think this probably has hurt while we're growing like a rocket ship, but it's taken a while because people needed to like, are these guys successful?
Yeah, that's
what are
right.
they doing? Because it's not the glossy stuff where in 60 seconds I pull up in my Lambo and I say, if you do this and bang on the table, you will be rich too. This is what everybody, all the hucksters are out there telling you. Let's start on step 3. Let's maximize your money. And look, it makes sense. Guys, I want to tell you, it is fun once you start building wealth that you can look for these maximizing opportunities, and they fall into real estate, they fall into investing in other companies, and I love it. The problem with all of these sexy ways to maximize your wealth, they require money.
That's exactly
they
right.
require deep pockets, because I will tell you, when Bo and I bought our first commercial building, we had our current landlord at the time. He said, "Boy, you guys did great. You bought a great piece of property, but I hope you got the money that if
right.
this thing gets ugly, you're still gonna be able to pay that mortgage."
Mm-hmm.
Because he goes, "That's the biggest mistake I see with other commercial real estate investors, is that you better be able to cover when things are tough, because when down markets happen." It's not like the V-shaped recovery we're used to with the stock market. Like beginning of the pandemic, stock market gets crushed, loses 35%.
Yep.
It's a rocket ship to where we close out the year of 2020 actually positive.
That's right.
That's what's called a V-shaped recovery. Real estate, as anybody knows, from 2008 to really 2012, can sit on the bottom and do what's called a U-shaped recovery. And if you're using leverage, because everybody loves on this step 3 of maximizing, we love the multiplier effect that leverage debt gives you on your return.
Yep.
But guess what? That leverage comes with a price when you go and maximize what you can do and not able to cover the mortgage. It maximizes and leverages how fast you can fall as well.
Now, look, here's a disclaimer, because I feel like this is happening a lot right now. So I'm going to try to slow down, speak carefully here. In most markets in this country, real estate is doing pretty well. You buy a house today, and all of a sudden, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, 18 months from now, the house has gone up 20%, 30%, 40%. It's sort of astronomical. It's a super wild thing. I've had a lot of young people saying to me, "Hey, Bo, I see what's going on in real estate. I have a pretty good income. Here's what I want to do. I want to go buy a house, and it's going to have a $1,500 mortgage. I know that I can rent that house for $1,500. It's going to cover the mortgage. It's going to pay for itself. And then all I have to do is do that for a few years, and then I'll just sell the house and make money." And it sounds so simple and it sounds so easy, but the question I always follow up with is, "Hey, that's a great idea. What's your emergency reserve look like?" "Oh, well, I got $10,000 in the." "Oh, well, what's your portfolio look like?" "Oh, well, I do like 3% into my 401k. Well, you doing any wrong?" No, I'm not doing. So many people get it out of order. They want to jump to that sexy, exciting, seemingly easy thing before they get the foundation put in place. And before, just like you said, Brian, they are deep enough to cover what happens when you got to put a new roof on it. What happens when your tenants decide to tear something up? What happens when your tenants just don't pay you? It's not as easy as the brochure might suggest. You better make sure you're prepared and ready for when it does get difficult.
Things are so crazy right now. The house from Poltergeist that's built on a burial ground would actually sell, because everybody is waiving appraisals.
Yep.
They're waiving due diligence on looking at what's going on real estate. It is, and it reminds me of, because I've been investing and I've been managing money long enough, in decades, that rising tides lift all boats.
That's right.
And that's the thing. A lot of people, it looks so easy. You don't really see how good you are at something until things get tough. And that's what I tell you that, because you might be buying a dog and not realize
exactly
it because
right.
we're just not in the right market. Because you know what happens when interest rates go up, and they will go up because we have inflation concerns right now. We're going to get to see how frothy the real estate market really is. And that's that whole Warren Buffett. You don't get to see who's skinny dipping. You don't get to see who's swimming naked until the tide goes out.
That's right.
And that's what I just want to protect you guys. So we know maximization, and these are wealthy folks' decisions. And I love, when you get to this graduation point that you now get to go beyond just working for your money. That's step one. Step two is now you get to invest in passive, easy, pretty much set it, forget it type investments. That's your index investing, that's your REITs, that's the other things, your bonds, the boring stuff. When you graduate to where you have a big enough pot of money that you can get to maximizers, you are now doing wealthy folks stuff. And that's great. I want to commend you, but you got to make sure you're doing it right, that you have the pocket depth that no matter what comes your way, you're not going to get devastated and lost. Because a lot of people, I feel like especially young people, are faking it, hoping that they make it off of, that they get lucky. And that's what you really are. You're tempting fates. Because there are people, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, there are 20-somethings that will go buy 26 rental homes, and in the right economy, in the right market, you're going to be rich because you didn't get caught swimming naked. But you have to be careful because somebody gets left holding the bag if you're doing it wrong. So be careful of that, because buildings, that's active real estate. That's where the real big returns that are above that 11% that you showed in step two. But you're going to be involved in that process. It's going to be so far from passive that, that's where I pick on Bo about, because we've had residents who come to us and be like, hey, that commode's clogged up. And you know that they're the one that clogged that commode up, but you're the one that's going to go in there and plunge that poo.
Yeah, it's pretty awful.
That is active. That's not, that's as far as you can get from passive out there. Alternative investments. This is the sexy stuff where you're getting K1s every year. You are essentially investing in businesses. You're doing things and this stuff has so much sizzle that the SEC basically has you sign a sheet of paper saying, yeah, I'm so rich, I'm an accredited investor that I know that I might lose 100% of this money, because that's what happens when you are signing off, when you have to show that you have assets and resources, is that you are going beyond and you're taking additional risk. Just make sure you know what you're doing before you do that.
Hey, you know what? This is, I'm looking at the content team. Hot take, cold take. This is a take that's unpopular. I don't know the right way to say that. I am of the opinion, there's a lot of folks who right now really want to go buy individual stocks. They hear what happened with maybe this car company or this tech company, or maybe they want to start getting into Bitcoin, and that's fine. You want to start buying cryptos or that. We are not opposed to those things, but we are opposed to getting them out of whack and out of order. And we don't think that you should even begin entertaining or begin thinking about that until you are at the maximized stage, where you can take 5 to 10% of your portfolio, of the liquid wealth that you've built up, and then maybe deploy it towards those things. I see so many friends who say, hey, I'm gonna go buy Bitcoin. I got my account, I'm gonna do the thing. I'm like, awesome, cool. Did you max out your Roth last year? What's a Roth? And I'm like, you're getting it out of whack. Make sure you do the things in the right order in the right time.
Yeah, this is what sets you up to, no matter, we're helping you. The way we always create systems, the reason we have the financial order of operations, the reason we're talking about the 4 steps to creating wealth, is we know that there's nobody out there sharing behind the scenes what is actually going on. We're trying to cut through the clutter and actually help you. And that leads to step 4. And this is the greatest one, and I love this. This is when you reach financial independence. Now realize I didn't say there's a 5th one out there called abundance. We talk about that in the 5 levels of wealth, but this is reach financial independence, where once again, now you get to trade in your resources, your money. So you use your time how you want to do it. You don't go to a dinner or a fundraiser, or you don't go to a job unless you want to. You are the king, the queen who discerns what I'm spending my time doing.
That's right. You get to do what you want, when you want, and how you want to do it. And this is what I think that most Americans frankly get wrong, is they want to start here. But what they don't often realize is that when it comes to wealth building, there are some steps, there are some stages. We've done shows on this before, but to remind you, and it's similar to what we've talked about today, everything we've talked about today follows these steps, it follows these stages. You got to have stability, number one. You have to be above water and have your basics covered. Then you can start applying some strategy to what you're doing. When you've done that for long enough, you hit the security stage, where now you don't have to sweat the small stuff. And once you've been in the security stage for long enough, and you continue adding to your army of dollar bills, continue making those small, sound financial decisions through time, you do reach freedom. You do reach financial independence. What you want, when you want, how you want. And that allows you to begin thinking about and focusing on, am I going to make it to that final stage of wealth building? Am I going to make it to abundance? Am I going to know who I am, what I value, and what gives me purpose as it relates to my financial life?
Yeah, that's the whole fulfillment journey. And this is, look, I can't help but when we started talking about this show topic, that Britney Spears song, you know, where she talks about Bugattis and all the other stuff. And she's like, you better get out there and get to work. But she uses some other words with it.
But she says it differently to them,
yes,
right?
And that's the truth. I want you guys to get excited about wealth building, but you got to go get to work.
Yep.
And everybody out there is trying to show you shortcuts. They're trying to get rich, quick schemes. They're usually selling their system. That's not what's going to build it. If you follow these steps, it's going to start very slow. It's going to build because you're layering. And then one day, that compounding turns into exponential growth. Like I said, my own personal journey towards wealth was very slow, very deliberate, very disciplined. But then one day, you get there, usually around your 40s, and it just, boom, It starts growing at a speed that is faster, stronger than what you can do with your back, your brains, your hands. That is the most joyous thing when your money is working harder than you, but you have to know that there's a process in this.
If this is intriguing to you, this idea of these levels of building wealth, and perhaps you want to know where you are, where you fall out in that, we actually did a show on this, a 2022 edition, the 5 levels of building wealth. Go check that out, because one of the things that we love getting to do is load you guys up with information to help you along your journey. If you're new to the show, maybe this is the first time you're seeing us, maybe this is the first time you're interacting with us, go to moneyguy.com/resources. We have an entire resource page out there available for you where you can have our free food deliverable. You can check out our wealth multiplier. You can figure out, do I need to refinance my house? You can figure out, how do I prepare for retirement? We have all of these free resources available so that we can be part of the team that's in your corner as you build towards financial independence.
You mentioned the free stuff. I want to be on Team Accelerator because we do have tools that actually will accelerate this even faster. Because look, I want to keep creating the free content, but go look at our net worth tool. If you guys haven't paid attention to what's going on in your financial life, to create a dashboard to know how well you're growing, what's your 3-bucket strategy, are you doing well on the millionaire formula? We've got you covered with the net worth tool. And then maybe some of you guys are brand new and you're loving this content. You're like, these guys are shooting me straight. What should I do with my very next dollar? We have the financial order of operations. And I want you to go check that out because there are 9 steps to tell you what to do with your next dollar. I don't care what level, if you just brand new started getting your first job, started making your money, you want to maximize it, or if you're somebody who's in that messy middle and yet you're saving the 20-25%, you need to know what's next. We've got you covered with the financial order of operations. You can go check out both those things at learn.moneyguy.com. Go accelerate your success. And of course, the final step, we call it Abundance Cycle. That's where we give you tons of free advice. We love on you for years, and you reach a level of success that you've gotten to the point that you don't want to screw this up. We got you covered on that too. We work with clients all across the country as financial planners, wealth managers, fee-only fiduciary advisors. Go check that out as well. Work with us. You can go to aboundwealth.com. You can go to moneyguy.com. We have it all for you. We're trying to just make sure the abundance cycle keeps creating fruit. And the fact that we give you the advice, we tell it like no one else, and then you reach this level that you can't help but want to graduate and work with us because we've been loving on you for years. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen. Money Guy team out, 2022, new studio.